My journal on the efficacy and safety of adding alirocumab to rousuvatatin versus adding ezetimibe or doubling the rousuvatatin dose in high cardiovascular risk patients. This work was supported by Sanofi and Regeneron Pharmaceuticals Incorporated. The importance this patient was important because hypercholesterolemia is a major risk factor for the development of arteriosclerosis and coronary heart disease. Reducing low-density lipoprotein cholesterol with statins lowers the risk of cardiovascular disease and mortality. There is a clear relationship between the degree of absolute LDL lowering and the degree of cardiovascular event reduction. So ultimately, reduction in LDL is the primary target in order to reduce cardiovascular events. The objective was to compare the lipid-lowering efficacy of adding alirocumab to rousuvatatin versus any other treatment strategies. As far as the trial goes, the patient entered a 2 to 6 week screening process where they were randomized according to their baseline rousuvatatin regimen. So what all the patients had in common was that they were taking rousuvatatin, whether it was either 10 milligrams or 20 milligrams a day of rousuvatatin. This trial was 24 weeks long and it was double blinded. There were 3 different treatments. Either there was an add-on therapy with sub-Q alirocumab 75 milligrams every 2 weeks, or there was ezetimibe 10 milligrams every day, or they just doubled the rousuvatatin dose. So if you were taking rousuvatatin 20 milligrams, you would get one of those 3, which was the add-on of the sub-Q alirocumab 75 milligrams, or the add-on of the ezetimibe 10 milligrams a day sub-Q, or just the doubling of the oral dose of rousuvatatin. So if you were taking 10, you would get 20, or if you were taking 20, you would get 40. This trial took place among 79 sites, and some of these sites included the United States, the United Kingdom, Mexico, Canada, Germany, Italy, Spain. The protocol was reviewed and approved by the Institutional Review Board of Ethics of Committee at each participating center, and the study was conducted in accordance with the International Conference of Harmonization and Good Clinical Practice. So even though there were 79 different sites, 79 different sites, they were all held to the same standard and reviewed by the board. So no site was different from the other. The study included adult patients with hypercholesterolemia at very high or high cardiovascular risk receiving rousuvatatin 10 or 20 milligrams a day for at least 4 weeks prior to the screening. This patient population also included those who suffer from cardiovascular disease or diabetes mellitus, and patients who had an LDL greater than or equal to 70, or patients who had a cardiovascular, who had a CVD greater than 5%. Patients who were excluded from this experiment were, of course, patients who were less than 18 years of age, or patients who were taking any other statins other than rousuvatatin 30 days prior to the experiment. The primary efficacy endpoint was the percent change from the baseline calculated LDL to the 24-week mark. So basically, the patients were being evaluated every couple weeks, and so for the primary endpoint, it was for them to measure the baseline from when they first started. So if you first started and your LDL was 85, to what your LDL was at the 24-week mark. And the secondary endpoint was just them taking note of what the patient was reporting each week, from the second week, the third week, the fourth week, the 12th week. To follow up with the patients, they returned for the clinical assessments on week 4, 8, 12, 16, and 24. So they received the therapy for a total of 24 weeks, but they also followed up with the patients at 32 weeks and at 52 weeks to see if the LDLs were still lowered based on the therapy that they were receiving prior. So there were a total of 305 patients in the randomized, and they were randomized into 6 treatment groups. The patients also received placebo, which made up the 6 groups. So either it was the ones who were receiving the alirocumab, the ezetimibe, or the doubling of the rousuvatatin. And then there were also 3 groups where they were just receiving placebo sub-Q for the 2 drugs, and then a placebo tablet for the rousuvatatin. So at the end of this experiment, what they saw was that the alirocumab actually, combined with the rousuvatatin, it lowered the LDLs by 50%, and the ezetimibe reduced the LDLs by 14%. And then the doubling dose of the rousuvatatin reduced it by 16%. So that would be like the resulting endpoints, what they discovered at the 24 mark. They basically compared the efficacy of how the alirocumab affected the low density lipoprotein cholesterol, and they compared it with the ezetimibe and the doubling of the statin therapy to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. As far as adverse events, there were no adverse events that were really noted. There was some irritation at the injection site, but for the most part, the rousuvatatin and the ezetimibe and the alirocumab, they all had equal amount of adverse events. So it was nothing more, nothing less than what you were getting with the rousuvatatin prior. And then some strength for this was that it was a random control, which helped minimize some biasness. The population was somewhat diverse as far as ethnicity goes. It was about 33% women, and then the rest were men. The only problem I saw, one of the main problems I saw, was that the age was only ranging from ages 50 to 60, and I would have liked to see how the therapies would have affected a more younger population or an older population. And it was also a small study of only 305 patients. In the conclusion, the population of high cardiovascular risk patients with inadequately controlled LDL doses, they experience a significant reduction of LDLs with the use of alirocumab. The alirocumab reduced it 50%, and even if without the alirocumab, the ezetimibe reduced it an extra 16%. Well, excuse me, an extra 14%, and the doubling of rousuvatatin reduced it 13%. So either way, the use of one of those 3 methods would reduce the LDL level. So I thought that was important, even though the main focus is on the alirocumab, but there are other options to lower the LDL a significant amount with either doubling the dose using the ezetimibe or the alirocumab. But of course, you would get more of a result with the alirocumab lowering the dose 50%. The substantial difference between arms in LDL lowering after 24 weeks was sustained through follow-up up until 52 weeks. With recent preliminary data from this, the control arm of study could potentially now be considered appropriate reference for any new therapy. But I do feel as though in the future that this will become, once there is more research, this will be implemented into practice, because lowering the LDLs by 50% is a significant amount in helping to reduce cardiovascular events. And basically that was my journal club on the efficacy and safety of adding alirocumab to rousuvatatin versus adding it to any other therapy. And once again, I'm Jasmine Robinson. Thank you.